Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sports Symposium, episode 10, Thankful for Sports. The only sports show where you have a live panel from all across the world. Today is November 30th, 2024, 2 days after Thanksgiving. We got a four-person panel here all across the United States of America. I'm Matt Sirianni. I'm from the great state of New Jersey, and I am not affiliated with Philadelphia sports at all, even though I am part of Talking Baseball with Sal Angelotti, which is located in Levittown, PA. Don't get me started with Philadelphia sports fans. But anyway, that's not the main point of this show. We got three people with us. We're going to start off with my man from the state of Michigan, diehard Detroit Lions fan, diehard Detroit Tigers fan, diehard Michigan State Spartans fan. My man, Jake Hogger. Jake, how you doing?
I'm doing great. What's up, everybody? Hey, I'm just ready to have a good day talking about sports. Lions are doing good. Michigan State not so much, but we're ready to go. Ready to keep things rolling.
I get that second point, but I'm not going to bring up put more salt in the wounds. Anyway, from the state of North Carolina, High Point graduate. You can follow him on Twitch and on X, which should be called Twitter, but I'm not even going to say that anymore. Anyway, we got Alec Nava. Alec, how you doing?
Ready for liftoff and all ready to go. All good now here.
And from the West Coast, from the state of Washington, he is the man, the myth, the legend who can pick 10 out of 12 NFL bets correctly, as you've seen on the last episode. John Welch. John, how you doing?
Doing really good. I've digested lots of thoughts on sports as well as my turkey, so I'm ready to go.
That's great. I mean, we've digested a lot of food over the course of the last 48 hours with Thanksgiving leftovers and on top of what happened on Thursday. John mentioned Thanksgiving. We are going to start off with our 2-minute takes early. So last time we did the show, we had the 2-minute takes based on the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. But this time is going to be a little bit different when we do the 2-minute takes. It's going to be based on our favorite Thanksgiving meal. So what happens is we each got 2 minutes to explain our favorite Thanksgiving meal. And because Jake is new to this show in the brand new format for the show, he's going to go first. So, Jake, your favorite Thanksgiving meal. 2 minutes on the clock. Ready? Go.
Well, I mean, you got to start Grandma's turkey, Grandma's mac and cheese. Those are the big two. Can't go wrong with those. But if you got mac and cheese, you got stuff. Then you got to add mashed potatoes. You got to get stuffing in there. And honestly, those are the stuff that you need. But if you want to add on ham, that's great. But one of the big things is that the day after, we'd always order pizza or something fun like that. So to mix it up, you have the leftovers and then you add snacks with that. That's the way to go, in my opinion. Like, if you're not having the leftovers with some fun snacks, if you're not eating Cheez-Its and turkey at the same time, what are you doing?
Oh, my goodness. Plenty of time to spare. That was a very quick and very rapid-fire one. I like it, though. Alec, your next 2 minutes. Go.
So this time around, I decided to go something different here. Instead of going with the turkey and the mac and cheese and all that, I decided to switch things up. Let's go with chicken. Chicken that we just got over recently. Have that and Brussels sprouts right next to it. You have some dressing right on top of the chicken. Well, not exactly dressing, but exactly some spices and a mix of soy sauce, sesame oil, olive oil right on top of it. And have it cooked to almost perfection. Make sure that this chicken comes out nice and hot for you to be ready to have. You got the Brussels sprouts right next to it. Serve. You have some bread. Cook it up. Get some olive oil and spices to go with it, and some nice, delish bread as a spread for that bread that is coming in nice and cold for you to put on that bread, and some olives that you can have with some chicken or with the chicken or the Brussels sprouts, you name it. You can't go wrong with the olives. So it's the yellow olives that we had this time around for the Thanksgiving dinner. But that's for this year, want to go with something different instead of the traditional way. I want to go with something more unique.
Dang, I am hungry just listening to all that. I am not going to lie. I'm probably going to grab some Thanksgiving leftovers after the show.
Need another round.
Need another round. John, 2 minutes, go.
Similarly, I did something a little bit different. I had a friend, and their family eats organic. They were telling me about a $200 organic turkey that they had for their family, and I can't do $200 on a turkey, so I went with the turkey breast. I spent $23 on just a turkey breast. It was amazing because I didn't have a carcass or any bones to clean up afterwards. You bake it right, you keep it juicy, it stays moist. And then I paired that. We don't do mac and cheese. I feel like that's a Southern thing. And I love Southern macaroni and cheese. Don't get me wrong, but we did scalloped potatoes. And then we had the Hawaiian rolls on the side, so it was really good.
All right, here you go. My turn. All right, so first off, for starters, I am a Jersey guy, and you know that in New Jersey, there's a typical bunch of Italian stallions who love their pasta. So we had some, I think, penne vodka with some white wine sauce on the side. So I had a little bit of that. I love me some turkey. The way my mother made the turkey this year was phenomenal, like absolutely amazing. Mashed potatoes, you can't go wrong. Stuffing, you can't go wrong. Spaghetti pie, again, pasta, Italian thing. It's kind of the classic. Like you have your typical chicken, and then you also got cranberry sauce, all the things that go with it. And I also like the fact that the turkey was made fresh. Like we made it from scratch. It wasn't something that we catered from another restaurant. It was something made fresh out of a box, and it wasn't like we waste our time. Like my mother and my mother's husband and my sister, we all worked on it really hard, and I loved every second of what just happened. But Thanksgiving is all about sports, and this is why enjoying those meals with football is the number one thing for me. Okay, with that all being said, we are going to get down to the nitty gritty with sports. We're going to get right into the and then NCAA football. We're going to get into college football first because apparently there's a lot of things going on at one time, according to college football. But before we actually get into some college football talk, I do want to keep people updated on the scores going on around college. First off, we're going to start off with the most recent games going on, all FBS. Indiana is now up 59-0 over Purdue in the fourth quarter with 12 minutes to go. Fortunately, that's not going to be enough for them to get into the Big Ten championship game because Penn State knocked off Maryland 44-7. They're going to go to the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. Who's also up 35-14 against Washington. Also, live games going on. Wyoming is up on Washington State with 25 seconds to go, 15-14. We also got Florida up on Florida State 24-3. We have LSU up on Oklahoma 34-17. We have Texas up in the battle of the Southern State 17-0 in the third. We got Iowa State up 24-14 in the third with 8 minutes to go in that quarter. And then we also got Virginia Tech up 26-3 on Virginia. So those are all the live scores. But we're going to go over some of the key results for college football because there were a couple of shockers. Let's start off with the following. Earlier today, we had the game, the rivalry of college football, Ohio State, Michigan. If Ohio State won this game, they were going to go to the Big Ten championship game guaranteed against the Oregon Ducks. That game was low scoring as it gets. Michigan was a 19.5-point dog, and Michigan pulled out 13-10 with a late field goal with, I think, less than 2 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. Will Howard and the Ohio State offense was very, very sluggish, and they could not get anything going. They had 2 turnovers and 3 missed field goal attempts, which was surprising. And with that 13-10 victory for Michigan, they go 7-5 on the season. Ohio State drops to 10-2, and possibly Ohio State's college football playoff opportunity has been dashed. Now, I want to dive into a little bit in this game because after the game, there was a scrum after the game where Ohio State and Michigan players were battling on the field. There was a little bit of a brawl. Ohio State players tore up the Michigan flag after losing in frustration. And like I said, Ohio State is not in control of their own destiny anymore. This opens up the door for a couple other teams to possibly make the playoff. I want to go to the Michigan native. I know the Michigan Wolverines are not your team, Jake, but I do want to get your perspective on what exactly transpired today.
Okay, so for this is my biggest hate watch of the year. I want both teams to lose. Nothing good to happen to them, right? So to see this game, neither team deserved to win. It was turnovers. It was field goals. It was just ugly football all around. So when I look at this game, I think none of these teams deserve to win. Ohio State should be knocked down 20 rankings or something. Like, that was terrible. And the fight after the game was just a show of how little class either one of those programs has. I mean, Michigan just planting the flag and going crazy. Like, if I was the coach, I wouldn't let my players do that. But if I'm Ohio State, there's no need for me to go run and rip up the flag. And if I'm the Ohio State police, there's no reason for me to use pepper spray. Like, all around, it's an ugly situation, which is pretty much just how the game went because the game itself was ugly from start to finish. There was not a single play where I thought it was a good play by anyone. It was all just bad football all around.
Yeah, I remember how immature things got and how out of hand things got after the game transpired. I didn't know that there was pepper spray used, so I thought that was a good catch, and I feel like that's just a pure example of how classless things got between the two teams and how bitter the rivalry is. John, I know you were shaking your head a little bit. What's your take?
Well, yeah, the physicality is one of the things that dominates this rivalry, and Michigan has been more physical the last four times that these teams have faced each other. Brian Day is now 1-4 against Michigan,
Correct.
which is a huge stat. And I think the NCAA has to come in and kind of police this a little bit. I think they're going to after this game, especially. You're going to start seeing teams get fined if they start planting flags, or the Trident like ASU does when they win a game. It doesn't show class. I think it's immature. You win your game and you take whatever trophy you have and you go home, right? I mean, this is a rivalry. It's not like you guys aren't going to see each other again next year. So I think, the NCAA really needs to come in before this escalates, because what's going to happen next year's Michigan Ohio State game? I think, if are we going to pull out the billy clubs?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got to be aware of what's going to transpire. I mean, yeah, these two programs hate each other. But you brought up a good point. Where was Ryan Day and Sharon Moore when this was all going on? They kind of just let this happen. Ryan Day just put his head down in shame, which he deserved to, because that record against Michigan is putrid. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, Sharon Moore did not control the enthusiasm and excitement and adrenaline that Michigan had after beating their rival on the road, which shows how inexperienced he is as a head coach and as a leader of men. So I feel like that as a whole needs to be cleaned up. I think Sharon Moore can probably fix that problem years going forward. Alec, is this a new low for college football, and do you think this will get replenished years going forward?
This brawl here at the end of the game just exemplifies how ugly this game was from start to finish. That's what Jake pointed out to. Unwatchable football from start to finish. The brawl overshadows the fact that the Buckeyes entered as 20-point favorites over the unranked Wolverines, who are having championship hangover reminiscent to that of this year's Texas Rangers and the 2022 Los Angeles Rams. It also overshadows Dominic Zavada's 21-yard field goal to win it for Michigan, and the fact that Ohio State had no timeouts on their final drive and did not convert a single first down in the entire fourth quarter. But this is definitely a new low in college football. The amount of ugliness that transpired at the end of the game, and the fact that nobody on the coaching staff, not even Sharon Moore or Ryan Day, helped to break up this fight one bit. It shows that these two teams hate each other. I would not, but I didn't expect it to be this ugly. But I may be a fool, because if I didn't expect it to become this ugly, if such an incident transpires, then fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times. I think there should be a new saying for that. But pepper spray, that is a bigger low, and it paints a bad image not only onto these two teams, but also Ohio State police into trying to break up this fight. If you saw the reactions to the Michigan players getting pepper sprayed, it's a new low.
Yeah, it just sounds like it's completely over the edge of what we could do at this point. It's a football game. I get the rivalry is intense, but I guess, like John said, fines are probably going to start coming in for some of the antics that these kids are going to try and do. And I think fines are going to come on the coaching staff and the program for allowing this to happen. My take on this whole thing really quick, I thought that Michigan deserved to win. They played better than Ohio State did, and they did what they were supposed to do. But I feel like police pepper spraying the players was completely unnecessary at that point. And I feel like there needs to be some civility, if that's even a word, just to make sure that everything's just in order, calm. Like we can't have this during a football game. You can't rile up the fans either. I mean, one of the things that people complain about all the time in college is that when fans run on the field, God forbid someone gets hurt or a player gets injured, because we've seen that happen before. But pepper spray, that's a whole new level of out of controlness. But again, we'll cross that bridge when
Matt,
we get to the next time. Go ahead.
one last point. There was a few lines that were crossed in that game. I just wonder how many of them would have actually been crossed if John Harbaugh was still over there on that sideline.
Yeah, if
Was it
Jim
Jim
Harbaugh was still
Harbaugh?
there,
Jim
yeah,
Harbaugh.
Every single one of them would have still been crossed.
yeah, a lot of lines were
Harbaugh
crossed.
would encourage that.
Yeah. Bottom line is viewer discretion is advised when it comes to Michigan, Ohio State. But let's get into more results that came in over the course of this week. I mentioned Alabama won the Iron Bowl against Auburn, 28-14. Arizona State punched their ticket to the Big 12 championship game, 49-7 over Arizona. Honorable mention: Rutgers beat Michigan State, 41-14. Way to go, Scarlet Knights!
Cut that one out.
Sorry, Jake. Tennessee beat Vanderbilt 36-23. South Carolina beat Clemson 17-14 in what was a little bit of a shocker considering the fact that South Carolina had a little bit of a derailment in momentum. Army beat UTSA 29-24, surprisingly close. We also had Texas Tech demolish West Virginia. Yesterday, 44-42 in the natural battle for hate, I think it's called. Georgia
Good
Tech.
old-fashioned hate.
Good old-fashioned hate.
That's what
in
they
the
call
Peach
it.
State. Thank you, Jake.
Eight overtimes.
8 overtimes. This had to be, in my opinion, the best college football game I've ever seen. And if you have another take about me and you're watching this, come at me, because I cannot get over how well Georgia played down the stretch. I can't get over the amount of 2-point conversion plays that both teams had. They both went tick for tat in the overtimes in the 2-point conversion contests. Kirby Smart calling a timeout whenever necessary when he knew something wasn't right was genius. And Georgia Tech put in a valiant effort. Unfortunately, it wasn't good enough. This is just college football at its finest. And I mentioned this to Alec off air yesterday. This is the best game that Kirby Smart has ever coached in his entire Georgia career. And if you can name another game, I'd like to hear your opinion. But this is the best game he's ever coached in his career. So I want to get into this one really quick. Jake, Georgia Tech put in a valiant effort, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't enough.
Well, Georgia Tech, they took their foot off the gas and it cost them. They were up by multiple scores. And then Georgia started to play well. Georgia Tech stopped playing well. Then the overtime came in. It was like just the most sloppiest thing I've seen in a while until Michigan versus Ohio State the next day. It was just so sloppy. Alec, I see you, Alec.
That was Georgia Tech's lead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Overtime, it was just blown coverages, terrible offense. Really, I think Georgia played better in overtime. But the fact that it took 8 overtimes is embarrassing for Georgia, the fact that they were down by so much. But it's also embarrassing for Georgia Tech to choke away that lead. It was the biggest game for Georgia Tech since at least week 1 against FSU. And so really, it's just – I think Georgia proved they're not national contenders, but they're still a strong program. And Georgia Tech, to me, proved that they are close, but they're not there yet.
Yeah, listen, Georgia Tech, if you remember last year, Georgia Tech put in a valiant effort against Georgia last year. And Brett Keane, I think, has done a really great job turning around this program. I think the Yellow Jackets are going to eventually get their win over Georgia eventually. Obviously, this was not their time. They came very, very close, but it just wasn't enough, as mentioned before. John, I know the Yellow Jackets, if you know me as a betting man, they were 17.5-point dog going into this game. They had a great game plan. It didn't go well. And one thing I wanted to mention, too, in overtimes 3 through 6, a lot of passing plays from 3 to 6 overtimes. And then from overtime 7 to overtime 8, you saw the Georgia defense start to blitz. Both
Yep.
teams called a quarterback draw. Then I think it was really smart for Kirby Smart to call a handoff play, a running play, an overtime 8 when everyone was throwing the ball and everyone was calling a quarterback draw. What do you think Georgia had left in the tank that Georgia Tech did not have left in the tank?
I think you have to look at the program. I think the strength of the Bulldogs program is what won out. I think the strength of the coaching is what won out. I agree that Kirby Smart probably coached his above his weight last night. They were down 17-0 and came all the way back. It was definitely a rivalry game, one of my favorite rivalry games of the weekend. With going toe to toe, back and forth, 8 overtimes. But I think the coaching and the way that they changed how the offense was running plays into the end zone was what actually got it in the end. My biggest takeaway is that they will probably be playing Texas next week for the championship, and I think they
It's
have a
looking like
good
that,
chance. I think they have a good chance of beating Texas for the SEC championship. So I don't think they're out. I don't know that they're going to make it all the way through this 12-team playoff, but I think they're going to get to the playoffs.
Now, Alec, one thing I wanted to
think,
mention. Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
No,
John.
go ahead.
Okay.
No,
So,
go ahead.
Alec, one thing I wanted to mention to you, and this is for the audience at home. If Georgia had lost this game, next week would have been do or die for the SEC championship because you got to remember, they were going to be at 3 losses if Georgia Tech had finished it off. And if they were sitting there at 3 losses, the SEC championship game, you would have gotten the bye if you had won. If you didn't win the SEC championship, you would have been out. And Texas would have gotten the bye, and Georgia would have been on the outside looking in clearly. But now, do you think this kind of revived Georgia winning a game like this, Alec?
If you speak on games like this, it would be technically speaking, and realistically, they could have a shot against a club like Texas. But this game as a whole, what did we even witness? Georgia Tech, they took Georgia to the brink, going up 17-0 at halftime before Georgia showcased their grit that they have learned from Kirby Smart. 2 of Carson Beck's touchdown passes came in OT. Haynes King, his counterpart, threw for 303, ran for 110. Seemingly, a 27-13 lead on an 11-yard touchdown run would be enough in the fourth quarter, but you can never count out Georgia, no matter the situation. And this game exemplified that. Georgia Tech will soon get there, and Brian Key is turning the program around a lot in what is technically the second longest game in college football history, but it's also the longest game in SEC history. I would attribute that this would be the most exciting game that we have watched since LSU and Texas A&M in 2018 when LSU had Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson back then. But shout out to Brent Key and the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Soon enough, they'll be going towards a college football playoff spot. They're not there yet, but this game essentially puts them one step closer towards being regarded as a potential college football playoff sleeper.
Puts them on the map.
Yes, it does.
It definitely does. I mean, whatever you do here, I mean, any positive that you can take away from this, the fact that you took Georgia to the brink, you were a 17.5-point dog. You had them. You were knocking on the door. You were up by 14 with 5.5 minutes left. It all points to positive signs for the future. And like I said, Brent Key, you can't give the guy his roses more than we have already. And I think that I'm excited for the future for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. I think their time is going to come. But more scores that we have. We also had Tulane losing to Memphis 34-24. We had Minnesota beating Wisconsin 24-7 yesterday. We had Colorado mollywop the Oklahoma State Sooner Cowboys 52-0. Texas scored. It's now 17-7. Texas over Texas A&M. So Texas A&M just scored. This is like red zone here. We're gonna keep up every touchdown from every single game. Oregon's still 35-14. Indiana's in cruise control with 6 minutes to go. It's 59-0. Iowa State's now up 24-21 with 3.5 left in the third. UNLV is up on Nevada 31-7 with 6 minutes left in the third. Marshall and James Madison are tied at 17, but that's not really much of a meaning game, even though it is a competitive one. And we had a couple games go final. We had Wyoming knock off Washington State. Surprising.
Interesting.
TCU knocked off Cincinnati. Then we also had Western Kentucky beat Jacksonville State 19-17. Notre Dame beat USC 49-34, 35. They are in the college football playoff. Miami lost to Syracuse 42-38. This is actually a big one because it keeps Miami out of the ACC championship game. And now, because SMU beat Cal 38-6, that's going to set up an SMU Clemson ACC championship game. So Miami's now on the outside looking in from the ACC side of things, and they're possibly in trouble. Jake, I mean, what do you think is going to happen to Miami now that they lost their second game of the season to a lowly Syracuse program?
Well, they're on the bubble. I won't say they're out just yet. I think it's really going to depend on if how the rankings fall. They're on the bubble, but they're not out yet. It's still a devastating loss. Honestly, Syracuse just came out, played better that game. So that's on Miami for not beating Syracuse. So they could be on the outside looking in. I see them on the bubble. They're going to be a lot closer to the 10, 11, 12 seed than they are going to be like the top 4 seeds getting a first round bye.
And the amazing thing, too, is I wanted to go back to Tulane Memphis for a second. So because Tulane lost to Memphis yesterday, that guarantees that the AAC is probably not going to be that 5th-ranked conference champion that we were going to get in the 12-team field. So the Big 12 is going to escape with the 5th spot because I think Boise State has been the dominant powerhouse of the Mountain West Conference, especially Ashton Jeanty, their running back, who has 2,288 rushing yards. We're
talking about a co-Heisman right there.
Sanders. Yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely
Co-Heisman, him and Travis Hunter. Give them both the Heisman.
Those are my 2 Heisman candidates, to be honest with you. I like Travis Hunter a lot, and I like Ashton Jeanty a lot. So what we're going to do now, because the conference matchups are kind of set in stone for the most part, we're going to go over the conference championship games that are set in stone for next week. And we're not going to go over spreads because spreads are not part of college football. I'm willing to bet spreads on the NFL, but not college football. That's the one thing I'm going to tell you right now. So for the Big Ten, like I mentioned, it's guaranteed we're going to get Oregon versus Penn State. We're going to go around the room for every conference championship game and see who we got. So Oregon, Penn State. Jake, who do you got?
It's going to be Oregon because James Franklin doesn't know how to coach a big game.
Alec.
Quack, 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 quack. You know my answer? I have to pay homage to Emilio Estevez.
I love that. John, what do you think?
Oregon. If it had been Ohio State and we had a rematch of the earlier game that they played today, I think, or this year, I think Ohio State would win. But I've got to go with Oregon against Penn State.
I can imagine the spread between Oregon and Penn State being like a double-digit game. And I'm going to say right here, I got Oregon. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be too much for this Penn State defense. And I think that, Dylan Gabriel, who's also made a case for the Heisman Trophy, I think he's going to shine. So I got Oregon as well. Next up, in the SEC side of things, barring a miracle, because Texas is in the red zone right now with 2 minutes to go in the third, and it's up 17-7. The likelihood is we're going to get Georgia versus Texas. Rematch from earlier this year. Jake, what do you think?
This is tough. It's a coin flip, but I'll take Texas.
Okay, he's going with the Longhorns. Alec, what do you think?
Like what Jake said, it's a coin flip type of game. So assuming that Texas holds on to win tonight, I'm taking Texas. But if A&M pulls off the comeback, Georgia.
Yeah, because then at that point, whoever wins Texas A&M and Texas goes to the SEC title game. So if Texas A&M were to come back, it'd be A&M versus Georgia. John, what do you think?
I like Georgia if on an even playing field where nobody has the advantage. I like Kirby Smart over Sark.
Yeah, I like the way Kirby Smart has coached this Georgia program, and he might be the new nuisance coach in the SEC, and you can count on that because Nick Saban is retired now. So I'm going with Georgia as well. Next up in the ACC championship game, I mentioned this before, SMU, who came out of nowhere versus Clemson in the ACC championship game. Dabo Sweet is getting another chance to shine. Jake, who comes out on top?
I'm going to say Clemson. I'm not high on either of these teams, but I'm picking the Tigers.
Okay, Alec.
Well, Dabo Swinney getting a legitimate shot in 2024. And I thought the Swinney era was on a decline after last season, but it feels like Clemson's having their most successful run since the Trevor Lawrence years. Well, I'm pretty impressed with SMU nonetheless on their rise to glory. Well, another coin flip type of game, but I'll give Clemson the edge based on coaching experience.
Okay, Clemson and Clemson. John?
I like Clemson. I've been watching SMU the last half of the season, and they're playing lights out, but the teams that they're playing aren't the caliber that the teams that Clemson has been beating. And honestly, I like Dabo. I don't understand his dislike to use the transfer portal, and I think this might be his last opportunity for a playoff chance if he doesn't start utilizing the playoff portal the transfer portal the way he should.
I like that. I'm going to go against the grain against the three of you. I'm going with SMU. I think that this program, the way they've been playing, they have not lost a conference game so far this season. They've beaten everyone in their path, and if they win the ACC, it'd be a big surprise to a lot of people. But SMU deserves to put the cherry on top of what has been a spectacular conference play so far this season. Next up, we got the Mountain West Conference, which at the moment we look at it right now. The Mountain West is occupied by, of course, Boise State at the top. And then it's looking like it's going to be UNLV or Colorado State in that second spot to take on Boise State. Jake, what do you think?
Ashton Gianti has been unstoppable. He is a Heisman. He's up there in the conversation. I don't care who he's facing. He will run right through them. You can put an 8-man box, and he will still get a first down. I'm taking Boise State.
I love the way this team grounds and pounds. I love the way Boise State's philosophy of football has worked, and it's translated into success. Alec, what do you think?
So Boise State has already clinched. So if both UNLV and Colorado State win or lose their final games, tiebreaker is CFP ranking, which gives the edge to UNLV. But regardless of who comes out on top between UNLV or Colorado State, I'm taking Boise State. And I'm pointing on one name only, Ashton Gianti, who has been dominating at Derrick Henry levels in college football. He's that good.
I love the comparison that you just made. I mean, that's who he is. He's a beast. He's a big man that it's hard to tackle. John, what do you think?
I'm gonna have to go with Boise State. I think it's more competitive with UNLV. But even if Colorado State makes it, Boise wins no matter who they're playing.
I gotta agree. I gotta go with a clean sweep here. I'm going with Boise State as well. I just love the way this team has embraced this philosophy of ground and pound. They're undefeated in conference play. They look really good. Ashton Gianti, I think, is my favorite for the Heisman Trophy, and I think Travis Hunter gets second. But overall, I like the way that this team is, looked on the field. We're going to go to the AAC Conference Championship game. This is not really relevant, especially given the fact that the AAC is possibly out of the playoff mix, but why not? Army versus Tulane. Jake, what do you think?
Go Army. That's all I got to say.
Alec.
Well, Tulane, they just lost to Memphis, which is their third loss of the season. If they're not careful, then the Black Knights will be right up all over the Green Wave to just stop them. So, I'm going with the Army.
All right, John.
Army has been playing lights out this year. The way that they've been winning games has kind of surprised me. If they win their playoff, if the division championship, I think they might sneak in.
Okay, so Army might have a chance. For a fun fact, this is the first time that Army has ever played or is going to play for a conference championship in their history, in their 100-plus year history. And I love our men and women who serve in the Army, so God bless you all who serve. I'm going with the Black Knights as well. I just think that this team, even though they're like me and Madden, where you just run the football 90% of the time, because that's all I do in Madden, I do halfback isolation every single play.
Hey, their passing game's a little bit better this year.
Passing game has gotten a little bit better, but
them and Navy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're better. They've gotten better. But I do like the way Army has discipline. That's, I think, the one thing that you can't teach: discipline. So those are the conference championship games, but we also have one more. We got the Big 12 championship game. It's going to be Arizona State versus either Colorado, BYU, or Iowa State, depending on what happens here. BYU and Houston just kicked off, by the way, and Iowa State maintains a 24-21 lead going into the fourth quarter. Let's actually get the question first out of the way first. So Arizona State's in the Big 12 championship game no matter what. But who comes out of the Big 12 to face Arizona State? Jake, who comes out?
This one's hard. I'm going to have to say if Iowa State can hang on and win, I've got them.
Okay, Iowa State versus Arizona State. And who would win in that case?
I would probably take Iowa State.
Okay, going with the Cyclones.
It's going to go into overtime, though, if that's the matchup.
I like that. I like that flaw. I like that thinking. What do you think?
All right, so let's read off the scenarios because Arizona State has already clinched a spot. So first off, Colorado has the most straightforward path because they already won their game against Oklahoma State. How they get in? BYU loses. BYU don't have to beat Houston, and Iowa State loses to Kansas State. Iowa State needs help from BYU to beat Houston, and Iowa State needs to win their game against Kansas State to advance to the Big 12 championship game. You know, if anything happens between them, Iowa State cannot get in with BYU winning. So with that, I think this is tough. I just can't decide on either one of them. It's tough to go. BYU and Houston, they just kicked off. As just mentioned, Iowa State, they're up against Kansas State right now, but this one's so close to call. I would think Iowa State advances, and in a tight matchup, Arizona State wins.
All right, John, what do you think?
I really like BYU. I think K-State is a tough opponent, and Iowa State has their hands full. But I don't think Colorado gets into the conversation tomorrow when they start selecting. But I really think ASU can beat either team, BYU or Iowa State, and they have the best chances to actually get into the playoff as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go with ASU no matter what because I like the way they've been playing as of late. Their momentum is on their side, and I think that they can continue the mojo going forward. And also, I just want to give a little update, by the way. Iowa State, they just scored on a Kansas State intentional grounding play. So it's 26-21 Iowa State. Thank you, Alec, for the update. And I also have to mention another thing. It's 66-0 Indiana over Purdue. So Indiana is in the college football playoff no matter what happens. But we're also going to focus on, as we get a little bit of a breather here, we're going to go into NCAA basketball really quick. We're sticking with the college atmosphere of things. We're going to focus on UConn and the potential demise of this program this season so far. So for those of you who don't know, UConn went 0-3 in the Valley Invitational. They lost to Memphis, they lost to Colorado, and they lost to Dayton. So they're going to finish in last place in the Valley Invitational, which is rare for them because they are the back-to-back defending national champions. But I think this is a program that can bounce back. But you also got to remember, one of their forwards, Alex Caravan, had a concussion and had to be taken to the hospital. So that was kind of scary for UConn fans to take. Obviously, UConn has a lot of time. They're playing in the Big East Conference. And I put an extremely early hot take for NCAA basketball. I think Marquette can win the Big East Conference because this is a team that's well-rounded, well-coached. Shaka Smart is really good. And I think that I have a lot of faith in this team, especially because they came up short last year. Alec, I'm going to go with you. What's wrong with UConn?
Well, usually when you hit onto the ground like that on the court, it signifies a hard hit that can lead to a concussion. But he later got the clearance to return to normal. But oh my goodness, that was bad. But I don't know how long it's going to take for him to be out. But it may be fair to say that despite UConn winning their last game, the Huskies, they could be in for a dreaded championship hangover. They lost a lot of talent in the championship winning course. 23, they lost Adama Sanogo, Andre Jackson Jr., and Jordan Hawkins. And last season, they lost Donovan Quinn, Stephon Castle, and Tristan Newton. Caravan is the unquestioned leader, so they need to do a lot more around him. It's one thing to lose close games in your first 2 Maui Invitational games, but it's another where you lose to Dayton in an absolute mess. They couldn't make their shots at the perimeter. 6 fast break points. More concerning was the defense. They couldn't stop Dayton's guards. The Flyers shot 50% of the field, 47.1% from free. Those losses against Memphis and Colorado, valiant efforts. Solomon Ball, big shots, but he's not a threat to go off the bounce. Hassan Diarra, tough defender, but he can't generate offense. William McNeil cooled off in the second half against Colorado, even though he's one of their best offensive options. Jalen Stewart, Tyrus Reed Jr., they regress to the mean for them. Upcoming schedule for them, they have Baylor, Texas, Gonzaga, and Xavier, who are March Madness capable. Repeats don't come very often, and we may be seeing more clear evidence.
That's a good point. All valid points. I think that when you lose your first game the way that UConn did against Memphis in overtime, I think it becomes a psychological thing where doubt starts to creep in and you're not going to win an invitational all of a sudden. And I think that maybe, obviously, Dan Hurley, who's a fiery head coach, could possibly get a little bit of a burnout when you lose games. When you lose games and you're a passionate head coach and doubt starts to creep in, all of a sudden your confidence starts to fall. And I think that even though UConn has had better teams in the past, like you got to remember, they've lost a lot of guys to the transfer portal. They've lost a lot of guys to the NBA over the last 2 years. So obviously UConn is not as good as they were. But then again, this is the defending national champions for a reason. They can bounce back. Jake, I mean, UConn's plays in a very, very tough conference. I mean, do you see any sort of a way that they can pick up the pace and get back on the horse?
If their leaders step up, then they can, come back and be in the conference title conversation. I think the gas has just ran off. They've lost all of their good NBA caliber players. They've lost all of their best players. Now they're relying on their coaches. And honestly, I think they're still a good program, but they're not, favorites to win the title again. They might be round of 32 exits at this point.
Round of 32 exit. That's a very, very interesting take. Put that on recording. We'll see what happens there. But anyway, John, I know that Dan Hurley turned down an offer to go to the Lakers to stay at UConn, and now he wakes up to this. Do you think Dan Hurley's blood pressure is rising just a little bit?
Yeah, I think he's got the blood pressure rising. I think he's got the monkey on his back. The first words I wrote down for my show notes for this segment was Marquette. They are dominating in a competitive Big East right now, and that's not an easy league to dominate in. It's interesting because I'm watching the end of an era in Duke and in UNC, and I just wonder if UConn goes that way or if they come back from the dead. I think it's too soon to tell. But it's really, really interesting. Something I'm going to definitely be keeping an eye on with all the NCAA basketball that's getting ready to get played here.
Yeah, and you mentioned conference play is on its way. I mean, the Big Ten, the Big East. The Big East is actually the best conference in all college basketball, in my opinion, because it's not just Marquette. Creighton is always relevant. Seton Hall won the NIT last year. St. John's is relevant this year. They almost made it to the NCAA tournament. Xavier's always going to be a pain in the butt. DePaul, yeah.
Butler, too. Wow.
There are a lot of good teams in the Big East, and there's only 11 teams in that conference, believe it or not. So any team at any given time can give you a scare. And Providence is also relevant because I mentioned Providence. So there's always the threat of a Big East team knocking off a higher ranked team in the conference just because of how well-rounded it is. And it's better than having an 11-team competitive league than having 18 teams in a conference, the Big Ten, where you can have teams that are imbalanced and you have teams that are good. And you can have like maybe half the league get in to the NCAA tournament, but the other half is just doo-doo. So that's just the way I look at it from here when it comes to the NCAA basketball. But I want to stick to basketball, but on a more professional level. We're going to go to the NBA. So the NBA Cup right now is more than halfway done as far as the exhibition games that are going on. We do have a couple of surprises at the NBA Cup level at this point. We got the Detroit Pistons and the Milwaukee Bucks in the top of the East Group B. Those teams have yet to play each other. They're going to do that on Tuesday. Winner of that East Group B will go to the knockout rounds. I can already tell Jake wants his Pistons to advance. We got the Orlando
It's the
Magic.
only championship we have a chance at winning this year.
Good one. But hey, listen, the NBA Cup is a good consolation trophy for people. Plus a couple $100,000. We got the New York Knicks and the Orlando Magic at the top of East Group A. Those teams are going to play each other on Tuesday as well. The Atlanta Hawks have clinched Group C in the Eastern Conference because the Boston Celtics have lost to them, thanks to Onyeka Okonkwo's tip-in on the first game of the exhibition play in Group C. In the West Group A, surprisingly, the Houston Rockets have guaranteed their spot in the knockout stages. And look at Alec flashing the fingers.
We're back, baby.
They're back. In West Group B, this is actually interesting. The Lakers are out of the conversation. The defending NBA Cup champions are out. It's between the San Antonio Spurs, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Phoenix Suns are all 2-1 and at the top of the West Group B. So that's the three-way war. And then in West Group C, it's the Golden State Warriors 3-0, and everyone else is 2-1, 1-2, or 1-3. So that's where the standings are right now. I want to get to Jake first because I know I mentioned the Pistons earlier. They got to play Milwaukee. Do you see the Pistons pulling off the upset and advancing to the knockout round?
Well, because Milwaukee's played so bad this year in general, I think the Pistons have a chance. If we don't see another performance like we saw today against the 76ers, which is a complete Pistons performance, where we see just Tim Hardaway Jr. stinking up the place. I don't know. The Pistons seem to play good on random days and play terrible on most other days. So I think, if you light the fire on the Pistons to tell them, this is the NBA Cup, play a little harder. I don't understand why the players play harder in these games, but if they do, and if the Pistons win, I would be ecstatic to see the Pistons advance. It'd be the only playoff round I see us advancing in this year.
I mean, there's also a chance at an NBA play-in tournament, but that's just for another day. There's still plenty of season left for that.
That's wishful thinking for Detroit at this rate. I would love it. I'd love to see it, but I think we're still a year away.
All right, that's fair. That's a fair assessment. Alec, you mentioned you were proud of the Houston Rockets for clinching their group. Do you see them winning, making a shot at the NBA Cup and possibly making a playoff chase?
I was optimistic heading into the season, but I never expected us to be up onto the second seed. I mean, you can make an argument that the Rockets are the most pleasant surprise of the season, and Ime Udoka has established a queer identity of this team. You build around Alperen Şengün and Jalen Green. Those are the two young guys that you want to have a future for. You get Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, two established vets who can be difference makers, and you have them contributing towards both the offense and the defense. Past drama put behind Ime. Hard-nosed basketball, basically the European model. You also have Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. Contributing to the team in meaningful moments. Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, huge impacts off the bench, and Reed Shepherd. While OKC has the league's best defense, you know who has the second best defense in the league? Us. While the headlines in West Group A would easily be Minnesota and Sacramento, did anyone have the Rockets taking West Group A? Me neither. Now, if we can keep the same pace and build off this confidence and momentum from NBA Cup play, baby, we have liftoff.
That's all well and good. I mean, listen, the Rockets fell short of making the play-in tournament last year, so I think they have a chip on their shoulder to try and do well this year. And they had to clear the slate. James Harden's no longer there. No, Russell Westbrook's no longer there. So they got a bunch of young, talented guys who are just starting to find their footing. And it seems like it's all starting to gel, which is always a positive thing for Houston Rocket fans to see. John, any big surprises so far out of the NBA Cup that you're shocked about?
I think the Hawks have shocked a lot of people. They're at this point, nobody was talking about them. They weren't in a conversation we had last week when we were talking about the 76ers and the Cavs.
Yeah.
But now they're a top 3 seed going into the playoffs of this cup. So they beat the Cavs. They beat the Celtics, and they have the bye. So they're going to wait and see what happens. I think with Orlando and the Knicks,
Yeah.
and play that winner. And that's probably going to be my favorite game.
It would be. And now keep in mind the way the knockout stages work for the NBA Cup. 4 teams from each conference make the knockout round. It's each conference or each group winner rather, and then 1 wild card from each conference. And the way it's determined is based on head-to-head, point differential, points scored. There's a lot of tiebreakers that go into this. I forget what the main tiebreaker is, but there's a bunch of factors.
Head-to-head is always main tiebreaker.
Yeah, head-to-head is the main tiebreaker, but for people who are looking to get into the wild card, I think points is the number 1 tiebreaker in that front.
Yep.
So that's where it really stands there. Now, as far as the NBA playoffs are concerned, you did mention, Alec, that the Rockets are the 2nd seed in the West. I mean, God, that's crazy. And then you got other teams like the Spurs are the 10th seed. The Minnesota Timberwolves, who were in the Western Conference Finals at this point, would be out.
That
The Timberwolves trading Cat was just the worst move they could have made. They threw away all the momentum they had and threw away their upward trajectory. They're no longer a contender.
Ooh.
Wow.
Shocker. I mean, you figure Anthony Edwards would carry the team on his shoulders, but maybe he's getting a little bit too much pressure. But I do like the point that you're making. I mean, I think Minnesota, when they had the 2 bigs with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert on defense, that would mess a lot of teams up. And you got to remember, Minnesota had, I think, the top defense in the NBA last year. So it's very rational to say their defensive efficiency has gone down. But like I said, there's still plenty of time left. But I think Anthony Edwards can bounce back from this. I do like that seeing Victor Wembanyama in the play-in mix is great because that man has turned it to another level this year. I mean,
Alien.
he's just unbelievable.
Yeah, alien. That's all I can really say. And how about the Clippers in the James Harden revival arc? Play-in spot, 8th seed, no Kawhi Leonard, and they're still here.
Yeah, they're unbelievable. And then we go to the Eastern Conference. The Brooklyn Nets. My Brooklyn Nets are 9-11. I don't want to put those numbers together, but they're 9-11, and they're in the 9th spot, and they look okay. I mean, I have no expectations for the Brooklyn Nets this year. I really didn't, but it's good that they're doing pretty well. I mean, I think they're not going to make the play-in, but I think they could probably get close. They were just on the outside looking in last year, but you get rid of Mikal Bridges. I think Nick Claxton's your best player on the team. Look at the Brooklyn Nets as a whole. And then you got the top 6. I think Milwaukee's 6. They usually are a 5 or a 4. So they're playing
Milwaukee's
below their
terrible
level.
this year.
Yeah.
They're lucky they're in the East.
Yeah. If they were in the West, they'd probably be on the outside looking in. Orlando's 3. Boston is 2 by half a game. Cleveland's starting to fade a little bit. The Pacers are 8. The Washington Wizards are the worst team in the NBA as a whole. And then there's really not a lot of surprises. I mean, I like to see the fact that the Memphis Grizzlies are back on track. Getting John Morant back for a full season, I think, is a massive upgrade. John, do you think that there's any team on the outside looking in either conference that could make a push for the postseason?
I'd like to see what Charlotte looks like when Ball comes back after this 2-week injury. They kept it really close against the Hawks tonight, and they have a decent defense. So I'd like to see what they can do in this 2-week stretch and what they can do coming out of it. I really think the 76ers are on a slide, and that's pretty horrible how they're doing down there in Philly. But as far I still, like last week, I need to throw in the Magic out there. I think the Magic are doing something. I don't know I think they have playoff contentions in their heart right now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Charlotte Hornets are an interesting team this season because they have a lot of young pieces. They've been given a bunch of chances to try to make a move in the standings, and they haven't quite made it yet. But knowing how bad the Eastern Conference is, they can make a jump. I mean, to put it into perspective, the four teams in the play-in right now are Atlanta, Indiana, Brooklyn, and the Pistons. The Pistons are in the play-in tournament right now. That's kind of amazing. At this
9
rate of
and
the
12, 9 wins, 12 losses, and we're in the play-in.
That just tells you. That's
I
just
would
easy.
love if the team made the play-in this year. That would be ahead of schedule.
Hey, listen, that's what I
Like-
mentioned earlier. I'm like, you have a chance to make the play-in tournament. I mean, we're only a quarter of a way through the season, but there's still plenty of time to at least play consistently. I mean, who knows? There's still
Who knows?
plenty of time. 60 games.
Hey, Cade's going to be an all-star this year. I am going to say that one.
Okay.
He just
Now
needs
we're
to
going. Now
calm
we're
down
going to
those turnovers.
Yeah, you gotta limit the turnovers a lot offensively. Now we're gonna go into the MLB very briefly because we had only one major thing happen in the MLB in Major League Baseball, and that would be Blake Snell getting a 5-year, $182 million contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers with $22 million in deferrals. The Dodgers, I know, it's just crazy, but I think that the Dodgers are trying to set up a pitching staff that's elite for after Clayton Kershaw retires. Jake, since you reacted first, what's your reaction to this?
I'm a Detroit Tigers fan. Medium-sized market. Miracle run in the playoffs. But we're not going to ever be able to sign one of these guys. We're never going to be able to get the Blake Snells. We're never going to be able to get the Juan Sotos. And I am jealous that the Dodgers can just sign whoever they want and defer their contracts until the end of time. That's just what they're doing. They're buying World Series rings.
Yeah.
You know, we have to hope that a team with the power of friendship can come along and get him.
I love the power of friendship. That was the key phrase that you mentioned for the Tigers over the course of the postseason. John, I mean, these deferrals are coming in bunches for all these players. Was the Blake Snell just another case of the Dodgers having the money to do whatever they want?
Well, the Dodgers and the Yankees have the most money in baseball, and with these deferral contracts, I think you're going to see more and more top-heavy teams. Because if you can go out and spend money later on somebody and pay them 14 years after they retired, then why not? Why not do that, right? Like,
Bobby Bonilla.
that's what a pro player wants. They want money after they're done playing, and this is the first time I've seen that real money after retirement for players. The Otani contract was ridiculous in delayed money. And the Dodgers have a ridiculous lineup now with Yamamoto, Glasgow, Otani, Gonsolin, and now Blake Snell. Like, their rotation is insane.
Yeah, you made a good point there. Oh my God, my dog is going crazy in the background. Give me your points really quick on the whole Blake Snell situation.
All right, so if we're looking at not only Blake Snell but also Tommy Edman, who the Dodgers also signed to a 5-year deal. Snell $182 million deferred money, Edman $74 million. And you look at this, you look at the difference between the big market teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees who have the money to spend on whatever player. And the Snell signing shocked me because I thought he would be an ideal fit on a team like the Rangers because of their need for a number 2 guy. But that was pending they would bring back Nathan Eovaldi because he was also a free agent. But Snell coming over to the Dodgers, that adds to an already stacked pitching core. They're already set, but they may have to go to their outfield because Teoscar Hernandez is asking for another big payday. But we may also need to spark the question. How much are GMs and owners in small market teams willing to spend? How much payroll are they willing to use? Peter Seidler, who the late owner of the San Diego Padres, owned a small market team, but he invested that money onto his team, which made them able to keep pace with the powerhouses like the Dodgers and Yankees. And for that reason, they were able to bring in Tatis, Soto, Machado, all the big names that you heard of, and keep pace with the big boys, and that the Padres were able to succeed. Now, more teams need to follow that blueprint of the Padres. Otherwise, the argument of fans getting mad at the Dodgers that they're just signing whatever they want. Well, they shouldn't get mad at the Dodgers. They have to get mad at ownership for being cheap.
I'm mad at my owners for being cheap. I'm sure you are as well with the Pirates.
Yeah, same thing. Same logic of which I'm going with. But however times I get mad at Bob Nutting, it feels like I'm yelling at a brick wall.
They won't listen as long as they make money. They will not reinvest the money. You can be like the Dodgers. They print money. You think they're spending a ton of money on contracts. They're printing money. Them and the Yankees are the biggest brands in the MLB. They make so many millions and billions of dollars. They can afford these contracts. The Detroit Tigers aren't a humongous international brand in the same way that the Dodgers and Yankees are. So they won't print money. They won't, have an owner who wants to start printing money by signing players to big contracts. So you end up in a situation where it's these teams that are always making money that are always going to reinvest that money. And it's always been the Yankees, and now it's the Dodgers as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Dodgers financially have literally done everything they could to make sure that they can keep up with the big boys. And they kind of are the big boys. I mean, look at all the players that they've signed long term and the money that they're getting. I mean, the Ohtani deferrals, I mean, my goodness. I mean, that's just one of those smartest financial moves that you could possibly make for an owner. But one thing I wanted to get into really quick to wrap up the whole baseball discussion. Juan Soto, if he signs with the Dodgers, I mentioned this before, you could pretty much cancel the 2025 baseball season. He's looking for somewhere $600 million, and unless it comes from John Heyman or the Baseball Insider from
Jeff
ESPN, yeah,
Passan?
if it comes from a professional Baseball Insider, please don't believe what you see on social media, because I saw a post from a farce Twitter account saying Juan Soto signed a 13-year, $675 million contract with the Rockies.
Chris Bryant.
No way.
Come on.
He's going to the Blue Jays before he goes to the Rockies.
He's going to Detroit, guys. My source, I made it up.
Yeah, so
source said that I made it. No, I'm not.
So-
here.
So again, like if you see a source that doesn't look accurate, please don't listen to it and buy in what they're saying. But anyway, we're gonna move on.
Don't get
we're gonna
settled.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go to the NHL for a second. We have the Four Nations tournament coming up soon. Alex has a lot of the insight, but first, before we get into that, Canada beat the United States in the Prospect Challenge 10-0 recently. I mean, what more can you really expect? I mean, Canada is just amazing. I mean, Connor Bedard is just the headliner of that whole prospect.
Getting him in the prospect tournament is unfair. He's already in the NHL. Come on, man. It's not fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Alec, what are your thoughts on the prospect challenge and how Canada just mollywopped the U.S.?
Well, funnily enough, when you speak of Connor Bedard, he's lighting things up with the Blackhawks. But if we look at this, Harrison Bottinger was the only reason the game was not 6-1 or 7-1 for USA. Cole Reshney in Game 2 got the win for the CHL, needing a late goal to win 3-2. The Matthew Schaefer was the talk of all the event. So there was some chatter about him moving up to be a first overall selection ahead of James Higgins. But this lefty was far and away the best player in Game 1 of that challenge. End-to-end rushes, blocking shots, while he is dictating the pace of play for the back end. It was a star-studded talent for the CHL, rising to the occasion, cementing his status as the best defenseman in the 2025 NHL draft. Excellent skating ability, changed the pace to beat defenders on offense, matching the USA's best offensive players in defensive transition. The top line of CHL consists of Porter Martone, Michael Misa, and Caleb Desnoyers, which is nothing short of outstanding in this stretch, and they dominate for long stretches. All three are looking to part of top 10 picks, and we can't wait to see what they bring in store potentially to their new NHL clubs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Canada just seems to have it made for hockey. They really, really do. And I think Connor Bedard is an example. I mean, you got guys like Connor McDavid, who represents the Oilers. Canada's just got a pipeline, and I think that pipeline is going to be a generational thing for years to come. But I'm going to stick with Alec for a second because you do have some insight on the Four Nations tournament. I would like to hear the information that you have.
So on this Four Nations tournament, as we get into the Four Nations face-off, it was announced back on February 2nd of this year that the Four Nations face-off will take place at TD Garden and Bell Center in Boston and Montreal. It will be played from February 12th to 20th in 2025 between USA, Canada, Finland, and Sweden. So they have 2 practice days between the teams on February 10th and 11th, held before the tournament. 7 games will be played, and the tournament will be held in a round-robin format. Teams winning 3 points for a regulation win, 2 for an overtime or shootout win, 1 for an overtime or shootout loss, none for a regulation loss. Each team will play 3 games, and the 2 teams with the most points will advance to a 1-game final. These games will be played on NHL-sized rinks, following NHL rules. For round-robin games, overtime is a 10-minute free-on-free sudden death period. In the final, should it go to overtime, it is like playoff overtime, consecutive 20-minute 5-on-5. Teams will have 23 players, 20 skaters, and 3 goaltenders. So Canada, so far their roster is Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand, Connor McDavid, Braden Point, and Cale Makar. Finland has Sebastian Aho, Alexander Barkov, Miro Heiskanen, Esa Lindell, Mikko Rantanen, and Jussi Saros. Sweden, Philip Forsberg, Gustav Forsling, Victor Hedman, William Nylander, Erik Karlsson, and Mika Zibanejad. And the United States, Charlie McAvoy, Jack Eichel, Adam Fox, Quinn Hughes, Austin Matthews, and Matthew Tkachuk. Those are the rosters so far. It's only 6 players. The full rosters have not yet been announced. But so far in the schedule, in the round-robin games, first we'll have Canada against Sweden on the 12th, USA versus Finland on the 13th. Finland faces Sweden, and USA and Canada over in Montreal. So those first 4 games I said will be at Montreal. Finland and Sweden, USA, Canada on the doubleheader. On the 17th, it's another doubleheader. Canada and Finland, Sweden and USA at Boston. The final will be held on the 20th at Boston.
Wow. Pretty amazing stuff. I look forward to watching the Four Nations tournament. I have been trying to watch deeper hockey tournaments. I was talking to Jake off there about college hockey, and he says it's pretty amazing to watch. I get into the Frozen Four from time to time, so this should be something interesting to watch with the Four Nations tournament. I look forward to it. But now, this is our final sport of the night that we're going to get into. It's the National Football League. So we're going to start off with the Thanksgiving games before we make our picks based on the spread. We're going to start off with the Bears and the Lions. The Lions were up 16-0 at halftime. They looked like they were in cruise control. The Bears tried to fight back. It was 23-20 late in the fourth quarter. Caleb Williams takes a sack with 28 seconds to go. And instead of calling their final timeout, and the Bears were lollygagging on the sideline, Matt Eberflus was completely out of sync with Caleb Williams of how things were going to go. And instead of calling a timeout when they were out of field goal range to run a play, Caleb Williams throws a heave, and it fell incomplete as the clock expired.
Coaching malpractice.
That's malpractice is right. And it's got Matt Eberflus fired because of that. Jake, I know you had a lot to say about this. Like, you basically said the refs tried to ruin your Thanksgiving. That didn't really happen. The Bears made your Thanksgiving great, if anything. What happened at the very end?
The game up until this point was the Lions not being able to finish the job, not being able to get the ball all the way into the end zone. A lot of things were going wrong. A lot of things were going right. Last drive of the game, everyone with our snacks and stuff, we're all going crazy. Then the Bears, Caleb Williams takes the sack, and he's like out here trying to get everyone to the line of scrimmage. And I'm just waiting for the inevitable timeout so he'll kick a field goal and send the game to overtime. But no. Matt Eberflus is letting his team go. And then time is just ticking, and I'm just waiting for the punchline. I'm waiting for something to happen. And then he throws the pass, and the clock says zeros. And I'm jumping up and down in my living room. I'm going crazy because the Lions get bailed out by legitimately the worst coaching I've ever seen. I've seen coaches coaching 8-year-olds who knew what was going on in the game better than Matt Eberflus did in the NFL game. And Matt Eberflus got a fat paycheck for that. I don't think the 8-year-old coaches got more than $100 to coach that. And the $100 coaches coaching What grade are eighth graders in, or 8-year-olds
Eighth
in?
graders are 8-year-olds are
8-year-olds are
second
in
graders.
second grade. So
Yep.
the second grade coaches would know what was going on. Matt Eberflus, need I remind you, making millions of dollars on the sidelines of NFL games, making NFL plays, getting paid so much money, more money than I could ever dream of. Doesn't know to call a timeout. I'm more upset about this game as a Lions fan because there were injuries. We couldn't finish the job. It was ugly. A win is a win, and I fully believe we're going to keep this momentum going, and we're going to learn from mistakes. But my goodness, did we ever get bailed out by the worst coaching I've ever seen? Just, it should be illegal to be as bad of a coach as Matt Eberflus is. It's the first time the Bears, in their 100-plus year history, 105, I think it is,
Yeah, 105.
they've ever fired a coach mid-season.
Yeah.
Do you know how bad you have to be that bad? I don't know if this guy will ever get employed by anyone ever again. As a cashier, I wouldn't want him as a cashier because he'll forget to like round up or give out the right amount of change. What can I say? What can I say?
Hey, listen, you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. John, I know that we had a Discord chat, and you said a key thing. You said the Lions didn't win this game, the Bears lost this game, and Matt Eberflus ultimately lost his job. What happened in your mind?
So I have a lot to say. I've thought about this nonstop since Thanksgiving. Um, the sequence of events was fascinating to me because people keep talking about calling a timeout, calling a timeout. They had just called a timeout before they went out and got on the field. And I think what they were trying to do was set up a pass for a touchdown. And that's what you saw. You saw the missed pass and then time ran out. But what you didn't see was Caleb Williams dancing around in the backfield for 14 seconds while time was running out. Like he's waiting to throw a pass to win the game instead of setting up a field goal. And I think that was for me that was the error, the coaching error. We've seen really, really horrific clock management, especially last year in Denver. They had to hire somebody to clock manage for the head coach because he wasn't doing a good job with that. So as far as Eberflus goes, the way that they handled that situation is really, really interesting to me because they trotted him out and let him do a press conference yesterday morning and
Yeah.
then fired him. Like he came out and told Chicago press that he was really confident about coaching against the 49ers, and hours later he's fired. So that to me was an interesting move. And at this point, the Chicago Bears have found 6 different ways to lose a game at the end of each game, the last 6 games. It's one of the weirdest stats in NFL history.
It really is an insanely weird stat, and they have not gotten their act together since the Hail Mary game against the Commanders. Alec, you gave me a little bit of update. You said that Iowa State now leads 29-21 over Kansas State with 1:15 to go. I'm going to come to you on the Chicago Bears really quick because this team has not gotten it together. They have not gotten any sort of positive vibes. They're on a 6-game losing streak. Matt Eberflus basically said we handled this the right way. Do you
That's what
agree
got
at
him
all with
fired.
what he said?
That's what got him fired. Okay. The Bears don't fire coaches mid-season. And then Matt Eberflus went and doubled down. Like, I would understand firing a coach after what he did, but the Bears hadn't fired him yet. They fired him after he went into the press conference and tried to double down and act like everything was okay. Like, there's clearly a lot of problems going on. You'd think you'd acknowledge it. But since he didn't, I think that's what got him fired.
Alec, what do you think?
Yeah, that doubling down on that coaching malpractice is what got him fired. Normally, you would call timeout after Caleb gets sacked on second down. Bird of 26, you wasted 26 seconds of game clock and forced Caleb to throw a heave towards the end zone. But even if Romo Dunze caught that ball, he still would have been stopped short of the goal line of the game winner. You call a timeout, play the field position game, get back in the field goal range, hit the time field goal to force it to overtime, assuming that it doesn't get blocked. But no, you go ahead and do that. The Lions, they were falling apart in the second half after leading 16 in this game. But now they're on a 10-game winning streak for the first time in 90 years. 11-1 to start the season. But that coaching gaffe is inexcusable. 5-19 in one possession games, 14-32. But this isn't just exclusive to just coaching gaffes. Shane Waldron, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's between him and Luke Getzey. But also with the fact that Waldron was not the guy that developed Geno Smith on the way through. And Ryan Posey's not blameless either. It was his call keeping Eberflus, and now he got what he asked for. The coaching search is going to be interesting. And Thomas Brown, who got promoted to interim offensive coordinator, I got to wonder how he feels being promoted to interim head coach now after 17 days.
Yeah, it's been a crazy cycle for Thomas Brown, and I think the Bears in general just need a whole new makeover at the coaching staff. One thing that I mentioned is they might need to hire an offensive-minded coach because they've hired defensive-minded coaches the last couple of cycles. I know that Matt Nagy is technically an offensive guy, but he's been on coaching Patrick Mahomes on the sidelines as a QB coach. But next Thanksgiving game that I want to get into really quick, the Giants at the Cowboys. My God, Drew Lock just gives me a headache sometimes. But the Cowboys end up winning their first home game of the season, 27-20. The Cowboys, Micah Parsons, still thinks that they're alive in the playoff hunt, even though it's really hard to say.
Delusion.
Jake, you said the magic word, delusion. What do you think?
I think the Cowboys are just a mess. It's just really crazy to see the Cowboys just in the state that they are right now. They're not like an all-time terrible team, but by Cowboy standards, to think that you're still in the playoff hunt it's laughable. That's what it is. I mean, they beat up on the Giants, who started Drew Lock on Thanksgiving. I don't know what part of that makes you think like it's time to celebrate. No, how many wins did they have? Was that their fourth or fifth? It's
Fifth.
not a hot
Fifth. They're 5-7.
fifth. 5-7. Yeah, no, that's not a good enough record to celebrate the playoffs. They've not been good in this era that they're in, the Dak Prescott era. They don't even have Prescott at this point.
Yeah.
They have Central Michigan legend Cooper Rush starting. Fire up, Chips. Cooper Rush is terrible. And their big offseason move was bringing back Ezekiel Elliott, who was already washed like 3 years ago. It's even worse at this point. I don't understand what they're like trying to do. What are they trying to build? The problem is that Jerry Jones isn't trying to change anything. Like, that's the worst part to me.
He
just
problem.
doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah. That's pretty much the problem. I think Jerry Jones is, mind and his ego could probably get in the way of things. And also, Mike McCarthy doesn't know how to handle it. And also, Iowa State goes final 29-21. Thank you, Alec. And also, Houston's up on BYU 10-7. I do want to get into the Dolphin-Packer game really quick because I want to get into the NFL picks of the week. Dolphins have proved once again they can't win in cold weather games, especially in Green Bay, Wisconsin. It just wasn't going to work. John, your thoughts?
Well, you look at the stats. I mean, Tua did pretty well stat-wise. They just couldn't. They didn't have a run game in the cold, and that was probably their downfall. Tua can't play in the snow, and they put that. They had a segment on that pre-game before that game. They talked about it, and they keep proving that over and over again. Miami is going to have its hands full with decision making as far as what to do with Tua going forward after this season. A lot of people were calling for his retirement after that fourth concussion this year. So it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of a Dolphins team it looks like after January. But Green Bay is on a surge. They beat San Fran last week. Looked really good against them. They looked really good against Miami. The NFC North is probably the hottest division in the NFL right now. Yeah. And you have some really, really tough teams. You have the Vikings, you have the Lions, and now the Packers, all clamoring for division spots, which is going to take away from the NFC West and the NFC East. I don't think the Cowboys get in with those three teams up there.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard. All right. Last game before we get into the picks. Black Friday. You can't get a discount on this game. You can get it for free if you have Prime Video. With Taylor Swift in Arrowhead Stadium, the Kansas City Chiefs took on the Las Vegas Raiders. Low-scoring game. Chiefs were barely hanging by a thread the entire game. They finally take the lead 19-17. Aiden O'Connell looked great in the second half. But then, when they were trying to drive for the go-ahead field goal to win the game, Aiden O'Connell fumbles a snap by the center.
He has trouble with the snap.
Fumbled the snap, but then the referee threw a flag. We thought it was going to be a false start, and it would require a 10-second runoff, but that didn't happen. Chiefs won again by the skin of their teeth in front of their fans in another one-possession game. And I've said it before, I would rather take the Detroit Lions dominating people over and over and over again over the way the Kansas City Chiefs play, especially given the conference. The Kansas City Chiefs play in the AFC, which is a way harder conference than the NFC is. So I think the Chiefs are playing with fire at this point in the season. But if they go against teams like the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens, good luck trying to get past them in the playoffs. Alec, I got to come back to you on this one. What's going on in Kansas City? Where are they getting this from?
I don't know. Are they using the same devil magic as the Steelers are doing? And I'm saying this as a Steeler fan myself. They're 11-1, but they're a very fraudulent 11-1. Yeah, you nailed it. I would also take the Lions over the Chiefs. I would also take the Bills over the Chiefs. I take the Ravens over the Chiefs. I would even take the Eagles over the Chiefs, and maybe even the Steelers to win over the Chiefs at that end. It's just
Steelers and Chiefs are on the same level.
We could go over to that point. It's getting to the point where the Steelers are now evenly matched against the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes got sacked 5 times, mind you. Brock Bowers had a nice game, him coming back onto the field, even with Aiden O'Connell leading the way and Gardner Minshew out for the season. But that last play, Jackson Powers Johnson, who I thought was going to be drafted by the Steelers, rushed the snap, caught Aiden O'Connell by surprise. And the last play being a center of controversy because for anyone keeping score, false start and illegal shift have the same signals. False start, automatic 5-yard penalty. Illegal shift, declinable one. The confusion is that the play was blown dead because of false start, but it was changed to illegal shift. The false start was that as someone was not set, or illegal shift was that the player's in motion or is not set, or more than one player's in motion at the same time, or more than one player is shifting, and all 11 players are not in motion. But the Chiefs, they've looked very off offensively, and it's been on a downward spiral ever since Matt Nagy took over as offensive coordinator. Mahomes does not look the same. He's not on the same page with Xavier Worthy, and even DeAndre Hopkins is dropping third down passes. They're not converting on third down. The defense may actually have taken a step back compared to last season, and Chris Jones was held without a sack since week 4 until this week.
Yeah.
You look at all this, you're saying, how are they winning games? Well, let's look at this. Isaiah Likely's toes out of bounds in week 1. Dejon Anthony, mistimed pass interference on Rashee Rice in week 2. Brian Cook got away with DPI in week 3. The Falcons also refused to take the points. I'll give the Chiefs weeks 4 and 9 against the Chargers and Tampa Bay. But that they had to escape the Broncos on a blocked field goal, escape the Panthers and Bryce Young last week, and then escape this week. If I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm angry. I don't know how much longer it's going to be sustained because it's certainly not. But this reeks of 2020 Steelers level of fraudulence.
That's a good comparison because I remember when the Chiefs were 11-0 or the Steelers were 11-0 back in 2020, and then they finally lost to the Commanders. People were like, okay, maybe the Steelers have finally crashed back down to reality. And the Steelers didn't end up winning the division that year, but then they got beaten badly by the Cleveland Browns in the wild card round. This is something that I think could happen here because how do you win games the way you think you're winning? You're winning games by penalty, by block field goals by the fraction of a toe. But what's going on here?
They're just like reaching deep into the bag of tricks because they're clearly not good enough to overpower teams on their own. And the NFL wants them to win. They're doing a worse and worse job of making it look like they're not trying to help the Chiefs win. Like, come on. It looks so bad to the NFL right now when the refs are gifting the Chiefs wins, when the, just random garbage is happening to help the Chiefs win.
Where was the illegal shift? Not a single player on that line was moving, and they called an illegal shift.
Exactly.
At
Exactly.
least
Worse and
WWE
worse.
is entertaining.
I mean,
it's just getting worse and worse.
I called this last week. I said that the Panthers were going to beat the spread against the Chiefs, and they lost by a field goal. The Broncos lost by a field goal to the Chiefs. And, between teams like Buffalo and Baltimore in the AFC, I think the Chiefs have some chinks in their armor this season.
Yeah. Patrick Mahomes this season has looked like Roman Reigns' title run. By hook or by crook, he gets away with something. But anyway, I don't want to harp into this too much. We'll get over 2 hours by that way. But we're going to get into picks based on the spread. John did really well last week. He got 10 of 12 games correct based on the spread. So we're going to do this again. There are 12 games this week, not counting Black Friday and Thanksgiving. And remember, the spread is how many points a team is favored by going into a game. So we're going to start off. And also BYU to score a touchdown, so it's 14-10 BYU over Houston. But here we go. We're going to start off with the points based on the spread. We got the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Atlanta Falcons in the ATL, and the Chargers are favored by 1 point. Jake.
This is a tough one. I like the Chargers. I think the Chargers pull this one out.
Wow, okay. Alex has mentioned that Texas won 17-7. Alex, what's your pick on Chargers Falcons?
The Falcons need something. Just 10 sacks defensively all season is tied for the worst of any team in history since the 2018 Raiders. Pitiful company to be in. And it's not going to get any easier against a Chargers team has allowed just 14 touchdown passes on the year. Zach Robinson could use more play action for his offensive unit, but the Chargers are susceptible to big plays. This defense, however, had a big turnaround, and it's a perks that you have with Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter as defensive-minded head coaches. Justin Herbert hasn't seen a lot of the first 4 weeks, but he's been relied on a lot more ever since. And Ladd McConkey is filling in nicely at the slot role that was vacated by Keenan Allen's departure. But I would expect that Ladd, the Rad Lad, will have a big game, especially since the Falcons have struggled against slot receivers. On the way for a Charger win.
Okay, John, what do you think?
I like what Justin Herbert's been doing the last couple of weeks. I like Harbaugh as the coach of the Chargers. I don't believe that the Falcons are for real. I'm going to have to go Chargers.
All right, Chargers. I'm going to go with the Chargers as well. I'm going to take the -1. Next up, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's the Bengals -3 points. Jake.
I would like to say I think the Steelers pull out this one just because I've never really been a fan of the Bengals. And I think this season they're starting to fall off a little bit. The Steelers, on the other hand, are having a bit more, they have a bit more gas in the tank. And I think, they're up there. They might not be like a Super Bowl contender or anything like that, but they're up there as a contender in the AFC. I don't see the Bengals on that same level. So
Okay.
I think the Steelers win by more than 3 points.
Okay, so you're taking the dog. Alec, what do you think?
This year may be marked as the year that everything falls apart for the Bengals, and recent results have proved that point. This LSU duo can hang with anyone, though. If you want to hear stats that cancel each other out, the Bengals are 0-6 this year against teams 500 better, but Joe Burrow is 7-3 of a 20-1 touchdown to interception ratio against top 5 scoring defenses since Jamar Chase entered the league. But our defense has been lights out this season and leads the league opposing QBR because of the stellar Stones defense. Offensively, we can use a boost against a Bengals defense that's been putrid on third down and in the red zone. Especially this red zone offense needs a boost because it's the third worst in the league. But if you look at it this way, Defense does win championships. And if you look back, Cincinnati, even though they can hang with anyone, they're just not at that point. I like the Steelers in this one.
Okay, John, what do you think?
Steelers with the points.
All right, you're taking the Steelers with the points. I'm taking the Steelers as well. I think the Bengals' defense is atrocious, and I think it costs them another game. Next up, we got an interesting one. We got the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota, and it's the Vikings minus 3.5. Jake.
Well, Arizona's been surprising people this season, and as a Lions fan, I kind of need Arizona to win. I think they win by a few points, maybe like 2 or 3.
Okay, Alec, what do you think?
Drew Petzing is making the most of the Cardinal offense as the team's OC. And this year for the Cardinals was supposed to be a rebuilding year. At the same time, Brian Flores is making the most out of this Viking defense, which doesn't have a household name around them. You don't know a lot of these players on the Vikings defense, but Kyler Murray is 4th in the league in rushing yards by QB. This is going to be Minnesota's big test, especially, and Arizona will be tested truly for the first time in a while. They have not beaten Minnesota at their dome since 1977.
Ooh,
Well,
that's
that has to
crazy.
but at some point it has to end. So that's why I'm taking the Cardinals, because it feels like this screams trap game energy. And I trust Kyler more for big game moments than Sam Darnold.
Okay, wow, it's 47-year streak on the line, and he's taking the dog. John, what do you think?
I believe in Sammy D. I believe in his chemistry with the Jet. I really like what Addison has been doing of late, and I'm going Vikings.
All right, I'm taking the dog with Alec. I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals. So we were split on this one. Next up, we got the Indianapolis Colts taking on the New England Patriots, and it's the Colts minus 2.5. Jake.
It's about to be one of the ugliest games all year because pitting Anthony Richardson versus Drake May.
Yeah.
That is not going to be fun to watch. I think Colts win, though, like 10-3.
Okay. All right, so we go with the Colts. Alec, what do you think?
To Anthony Richardson's credit, he's played better after he was benched. Drake May is doing a lot of work to his credit with the lack of options that he's had, along with the bad offensive line in front of him. Though he's thrown a pick in 4 straight games, it's not just the Pats that are undisciplined. They and the Colts need to clean up those penalties. 13 and 12 times they were flagged last week, respectively. And Jonathan Taylor, for as good as he is at the running back room, he's taken a huge step back over these last 4 games. And the last 2 more specifically, averaging 46 yards and 2.6 yards per rush. That production is not exclusive to those 2 matches. And that can do with an undermanned offensive line. The Colts need to get around it. I think they do so here.
Okay. John, what do you think?
That's tough. It's a really tough one. I think it's going to be the Patriots by 2.
All right, so the Patriots upset here. I'm going with the Colts. I think that they found their groove in recent weeks, and I think that they can get another win here, especially because the Patriots are not as good as they have been in years past. Next up, questionable spread here. We got the Seattle Seahawks at the New York Jets, and it's the Seahawks minus 1. Jake.
I'm surprised the Seahawks aren't favored by more because the Jets are just an absolute mess.
Yeah.
I know Vegas likes to think, the Jets on paper are good, but if you look at them, if you watch them, this is one of the worst run teams in football right now. I'm taking the Seahawks by like 10 or
Okay,
more.
Alec.
If you remember that vintage Aaron Rodgers performance in week 3, it feels like it was eons ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no matter what the
Flash
Jets
in
do,
the pan.
yeah, the monkey's paw continues to curl for gangrene. Yes, they have extra time to prepare, but the Seahawks are a better ran organization than the Jets are. Woody Johnson doesn't know how to run a team, and Aaron Rodgers is more interested in hanging out with his buddy Pat McAfee. Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith-Njigba are all cooking at the Emerald City, and the key is to take advantage of a defense that is visibly fallen off a cliff since Jeff Ulbrich took over. Even though I have Seattle winning, do you know what's even funnier? The Jets are 1-5 since firing Saleh. The Packers are 4-1 since Saleh got hired by Green Bay.
Wow. John, what do you think?
Seahawks. I've got friends
Seahawks.
going to this game. They're excited about the Seahawks win.
Well, I'm gonna hammer one. I'm gonna hammer the -1. I'm taking Seattle easily. This is like the easiest pick of the day. Next up, we got the Tennessee Titans at the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are a 6-point favorite. Jake.
I like Washington in this game. You know, they do have the pieces together. I don't know if like they're still as good as they were hyped up to be early on in the season, but they're definitely better than Tennessee. You know, I think I'm taking Washington.
Okay, Alec, what do you think?
Well, the Commanders are visibly cooling off now, and there's the feeling that after they lost to the Cowboys, I did say if they don't put away the Cowboys, it feels like panic time has to settle in. Guess what? It may be right now. Jaden Daniels is losing its luster as of late, and the effects of Cliff Kingsbury's second half collapses may be settling in. That said, Tennessee, even though they started off poorly, Will Levis may actually be playing better behind a battered offensive line. They allowed 8 sacks last week and still won against the Texans. Tennessee is also the second most penalized team this season. Washington's pass defense allowed Warren 89.1 passing yards per game. So I'm inclined to believe that self-inflicted errors are going to define this game. Washington needs this one, and I think they will take it, even if it is in the worst way possible.
Okay, John.
I took the points with Tennessee last week, and Tennessee actually won outright. The chemistry between Levis and Chikakwanku was outstanding, and I think with a strong run game behind Pollard, that the Tennessee Titans are going to win.
All right. I take the Commanders, but I don't think they cover the 6-point spread. So I'm going to take the Titans basically on this one. Next up, we got the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars in Duval County, and it's the Texans -3.5 points. Jake.
The Jaguars are awful and the Texans are disappointing. It's not going to be pretty. I think Houston will come out and win this one, but Jacksonville's going to give them a good scare, so I think it's going to be really close.
All right. Alec.
There are signs that Trevor Lawrence could be returning, and if he is 1% good to go, that can energize the Jags offense that needs anything. I'm not really confident in DeMeco Ryans' coaching staff, but I feel even worse about Doug Peterson's staff. But the Texans, they found strange ways to lose in such games. Picking off Jared Goff 5 times after leading by 16 at halftime against the Lions, then sacking Will Levis 8 times and scoring on a pick 6. How do you lose both of those games? And the disparity between
their defense doesn't get the job done.
The disparity between the two defenses between Houston and Jacksonville is glaring. I feel Houston's going to get a much needed win, but they're not covering.
Okay, John.
Houston.
But do they cover?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a lot like the Lions Jags game where it's a lot more of a blowout than people think.
Okay, I'm gonna take the Texans -3.5 as well. I just think that Jacksonville, it's in Duval. I thought it was gonna be closer at first, but you know what? I think John mentioned a good point. It might not be as close as people think. Next up, we got the Los Angeles Rams at the New Orleans Saints, and it's the Rams -2.5. Jake.
I think the Rams have been playing good, but when I look at the Saints, I think that they want a win so badly. I don't think they get it here. I think this one's going to be the Rams.
Okay. Alan?
Every time these two teams face, I would still believe the Saints are still angry at the Rams and Bill Vinovich's crew for the no call. They won't get Vinovich for this match because that is Brad Allen, who I'm still angry at for that bad episode between the Cowboys and the Lions. Yeah. But despite all of that, Alvin Kamara has been the one constant. The Saints are getting healthier by the day, and Taysom Hill is coming off a huge game. But the one matchup I'm looking at isn't about wide receiver matchups because we know the obvious with the Rams. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. I'm looking more at an edge rushing matchup. Jared Verse against Talius Fuaga. 2 rookies. Verse as a rookie class winning 51 pressures. Fuaga is the lowest pressure rate allowed by any rookie on the offensive line. 7.4%. I think it's going to be tight, but I lean Rams outright on this one.
Okay, John.
I like the Saints. I don't. I mentioned it last week. I don't believe in the Rams secondary, and I like the Taysom Hill aspect, and Kamara is just gonna. There's no defensive line anymore, and I think Alvin Kamara just has a game.
I'm gonna go with the Saints. Not winning outright, but I think the Rams don't cover. I think that even though Darren Rizzi has done a phenomenal job, the Rams got shellacked by the Eagles last week at home. So I think that's going to affect them. Plus, they're still in a tight division race. So I think the Saints are going to play spoiler here for the Rams. So I think I got the Rams winning, but not covering the 2.5-point spread. Next up, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Carolina Panthers, the plus 11 Carolina Panthers from last week. It's the Buccaneers minus 6 points. Jake?
Come on. This is the Buccaneers by a million. Like, it's the Carolina Panthers, the worst run team in pro football right now. Like, come on. You got to give me the Bucs.
Okay, he's confident.
I've got Baker starting in fantasy. I kind of need a win right now. If I lose this week, I'm eliminated from the playoffs. So I kind of need Baker to cook right now.
I understand that. I understand that, buddy. Alec?
Wait a minute there, player. That's what I want to. That's how I want to start off here. Now I know one advantage that Tampa has is the ground game. The Panther defense, league worst, 160.6 rushing yards per game. Bucs average 128.1 yards per game on the ground, 10th in the league after ranking dead last to last season. But you get to Bryce Young on the other side. Yes, I get Baker Mayfield's continuing at the best season of his career. Take that, Browns. But when you look at Bryce, he has looked more confident in the last few weeks. He has not turned the ball over in 2 straight games. The Panthers secondary is vulnerable, but this is one of their big tests, especially given they almost pulled off the upset of the year last week. Their confidence has to be sky high right now, taking the 2-time defending champions to the brink. The loss may sting, but they got what they wanted out of this game. The Bucs pass rush doesn't really scare a lot of people. Carolina's offensive line is actually turning a corner. And you know what? I might even say it. I am thinking the Carolina Panthers will upset the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 13.
That would be the upset of the year. John, are you taking the dog?
No, I am not. I am going with Bucky Irving. I'm going with Baker Cutlets. I am going with the. Yeah, I thought you'd like that. Give me Tampa Bay.
Baker Cutlets.
Baker Cutlets.
I will admit.
Careful there. The Italians might not like that.
I'm an Italian. I hate it. I'm going with the Buccaneers. I just think that the Panthers have had a really nice run of being competitive, but I don't think that they're gonna cover the spread here. I'm going with the Buccaneers. Next up, we got probably the game of the week: the Eagles and the Ravens in Baltimore. Baltimore -3. Jake.
Battle of the Birds. Do I need AJ Brown in fantasy? Yes, I do. But do I need the Eagles to win? No, I don't. Let's go Ravens.
Okay, Alec.
Once upon a midnight dreary that sounds distant but not so weary, over many around the town observe an important piece of football lore. And while I'm speaking, not even bashing, suddenly there came a crashing. 2 running backs, full speed, crashing the stadium doors. Saquon and Henry, I muttered, crashing the stadium doors. There is this and much, much more. Had to pull out the Edgar Allan Poe homage. Both the Ravens and Eagles are 2 powerhouses, but the Eagles have yet to face a significant challenge like the Ravens. Battle-tested, coming off back-to-back games against playoff caliber teams. Chargers, upstart team, but they were respectable. Steelers, the Ravens boogeymen. It wouldn't be a shock if the Ravens pushed past the Eagles per game average, but we may be seeing ground and pound football up most between Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. And you know, Lamar Jackson may improve to 24-1 after this game, and there may be a likely chance. And it's one of those coin flip games, but as Baltimore prepares for a purple January on the way for another MVP case for Lamar, quaff the Ravens forevermore.
Wow. I love the poetry. Love it.
You delivered
John, what
that
do you think?
amazingly.
I like he mentioned, this is one of the highlights of the week. You have two of the best running backs in the league going at it. I like the over more than I like anything in this game.
The over's
But
51, by the way.
yeah, I think it's going to go over. I think it's going to go back and forth. I think the passing game edge goes to the Eagles, but I think the Ravens win.
Okay, the Ravens win. This was a tough one for me to decipher. I think that this is also an MVP showcase because Saquon Barkley's odds of winning MVP have skyrocketed in recent weeks, and Lamar's up there too. I'm gonna go with the. Oh god, I hate to say this. I'm going with the Eagles. I hate to say it, but I gotta go with the Birds from Philly just because I think Saquon Barkley has been so dominant, and I think that the Eagle defense has been turning a corner as of late. And then they're going to find a way to punish Derrick Henry. So I'm going to go with the Eagles. I hate to say it, but I had to say it. Next up, we got the San Francisco 49ers versus the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football. Buffalo Bills -6. It will be snowing in Buffalo. Jake.
Bills in the snow, that's easy money. No other team in the league has any idea how to play in the snow. We're not talking about a light dusting. We're talking about winter storm warnings. We're talking like this is almost as bad as when they had to move the game to Detroit a few years back. It's not quite that bad, but we're almost talking about that. And then you bring on the 49ers, injured and disappointing. Those are the two words I use to describe the 49ers this year. Versus the Bills with MVP candidate Josh Allen. And in my opinion, the favorites to win the AFC, I'm taking the Bills.
Okay. Alec?
You know how MVP races may be a four-man race? We mentioned about Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, probably even Derrick Henry. Josh Allen has to be up there on the MVP race.
He's the front runner, in my opinion.
You know, it could be a five-man race if Cincinnati pulls off an improbable run on the way to the playoffs with Joe Burrow.
Right. Mahomes locks in and actually plays like Mahomes.
You know, Buffalo is used to snow. San Francisco is not. Plus, Buffalo's beyond every one of their 5 visitors that came to the stadium, even with Arizona and Miami making things close at Highmark. We can talk about the Chiefs, but every Mahomes-Allen match is always going to be close. But even at full strength, San Francisco has to perform like the world beaters that we have known last season. The Niners are also injured here to heck and back. Buffalo, they'll win their 6th home game of the season by 2 scores.
By 2 scores, so they cover. John, what do you think?
This game is going to be a run game. Throwing in 2 to 3 feet of snow is going to be a rough situation. So I believe in James Cook and Josh Allen and their physicality over what the 49ers can do in the snow with a bang. I think McCaffrey's still banged up. So I'm going to have to go to the Bills.
I'm going with Buffalo as well. I just can't see the Niners, who are a West Coast warm weather team, playing well in freezing cold Buffalo and Orchard Park. So that's our picks for the Sunday night game. Now, the Monday night game is the Cleveland Browns, who actually did get a win in the snow, versus the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football. Broncos are a 6-point favorite in Mile High. Jake?
This is going to be close. I think this one probably is won on like an overtime field goal by the Broncos. Honestly, I have Jameis Winston at my flex this week. I need him to do good too. But in all seriousness, I think Bo Nix started off slow, but he's now starting to ramp things up. And I like what I'm seeing out of Bo Nix. I like what I'm seeing out of the Broncos in general. I don't like what I'm seeing out of the Browns. They're just a very chaotic situation over there.
Yeah.
I think they take the L this week, but you know, Jameis Winston is going to show some fight. Bo Nix is going to show some fight. It's going to be a game where the running game is going to, crash into each other. And like, this is going to be a crazy defense battle. I like what I see out of both of these teams. I like what I see out of Denver more. So I got to pick Denver.
Okay. Alec?
Jim Schwartz is 18-7-1 against rookie QBs as a coordinator or a head coach. The Browns defense is an 8.8 sack rate on dropbacks, which is the 5th best in the league. But when you look at the Broncos, they need to be careful around Bo Nix. Well, they need to scheme something on the offensive line because of how good this Browns defense could be, especially with Myles Garrett and his pity defensive player of the year. But Nix has not thrown a pick in his last 3 games. In that same span, he's thrown 8 touchdowns. He's capitalized on the Raiders when they were blitzing. Jameis Winston, on the other hand, he never quits, even for him being the Jekyll and Hyde of the NFL. But I could never hate Jameis Winston, even for his personality. This may be a close game. I may have to ride with Denver, and they should take advantage of the Browns' league worst 27% third down conversion rate.
Okay, Broncos country, let's ride. John.
I am going to have to officially put Bo Nix on Rookie of the Year watch.
Okay.
And I think that the receiving defense of the Broncos is a lot stronger than most people are giving them credit for right now. And I like Jameson. He threw for over 400 yards 2 weeks ago and still lost. So I'm going with the Broncos.
Okay, you're going with the Broncos. I'm going with the Broncos as well. So those are our NFL picks. Now, to conclude the show, I always like to do this to do a little self-promotion for our hosts. And since Jake is new here, Jake, where can people find you on
All
social,
right.
buddy?
You can find me anywhere where Shady Sports Network is, because that's where I'm with. We're at Shady Sports Net on X, and we're Shady Sports Network on Facebook and Instagram and anywhere else. You can find our stuff on YouTube. Subscribe to us there. And we got a website too, shadysportsnetwork.com. I do a lot of sports writing on there, so you can come find my work on there. You can also come find my design work as well. I love designing stuff for sports, so you can find that stuff there too.
Awesome. Alec, where can they find you, buddy?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. Also on Twitch at that Yinzer Alec. It's DAT Yinzer Alec. I am also on Blue Sky, same handle as Twitter and Twitch. And I post my replays of broadcasts on YouTube at that Yinzer. It is the same handle as the social medias that I've previously listed. Minus is my name on it. DAT Yinzer on YouTube.
Okay, John.
You can find me at Splash One Sports on X. I am a show producer for the Sportsocracy on YouTube and ESPN Asheville. And we'll just go with that.
Okay, now for me, you can find me on at Sirianni Says Sports on Instagram. You can find me on Matthew Sirianni on Facebook. You can find me as a co-host on Talking Baseball with Sal Angeletti every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for a Shared Universe Podcast Studios for Northeast Streaming Sports and for WBCB 1490 AM in Levittown, Pennsylvania. Yep, it's a commute for me to go from Jersey to PA, but it's all good. And one other thing I do want to say is, as much as I would like to thank our panel, I used to have one message that I like to share to everybody before we go. It is Thanksgiving time and it's the holiday time. Please, I respect our elders. I respect our older people over 60. As SpongeBob SquarePants once said, all people are the greatest. They are full of wisdom and experience, and that saying is absolutely 100% true. So if you know someone who is 60 or over, that's a family member or even a stranger, please respect your elders kindly and treat them with as much respect as you possibly can, because they're important to our society, and we need them for our everyday lives to help the next generation grow. But anyways, from Jake, Alec, and John, I'm Matt Sirianni. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in to tonight's episode of the Sports Symposium. Please follow us on the YouTube channel for Prince Matalia's YouTube channel, and follow us on the Discord at Sporting 101. Thank you everyone. Please stay safe. Enjoy your holidays this year. And if I don't see you next week, I'll be gone because I'm going to be celebrating my birthday next week. So I will see you guys whenever I can. But until then, take care, everybody. Peace out. Have a good night.